Developed, created, and owned by James PoeArtistry Productions.
A thought for the day in the Sage Experience. Hi, I'm James, and welcome to this PocbooksCrypto moment. The thought for the day section on the PocbooksCrypto.com website, has a lot of interesting statements, quotes, etc. That I started, this year. I might share maybe 7 or 8 a month or what have you. But for this weekend, for this special, what's the day? Oh, the day is already Thursday? Oh my goodness. Well, okay. Well, I was hoping to at least get out 7 of these thoughts for the day. They're brief statements, something to think about. Well, the one that I'm actually addressing today is, you probably noticed, I had 2 postings so far that were scheduled. One of them dealt with, I don't remember which one went out because I had videos go out and what have you. Well, anyway, it was a thought for the day, and I used also a mood or feature, so to speak, of a link to Dr. Anakasa, if I'm saying it correctly, probably not, but Dr. Fine Arts, Taylor Swift, one of her fan Instagram accounts that she has. And I mentioned in that thought for the day, have you also did a search from the PocbooksCrypto.com search areas to the regular website functions, not website, on the web, the internet, for some of these thought for the days or quotes that she's made. Not only will mine probably show up, but, that I've taken from listening to her, but I'm sure you'll find a plethora of others all across, 100 or so pages. I'm sure even more than that. See, I'm actually being what's it called when you're not, going full blown with what you're saying? They said I am being, I believe it starts with a C. Oh my goodness, the word just slipped my mind. And I want to say I'm not being overblown. I'm actually being, what's that word? It'll come to me, and watch I end up posting it or somehow. But anyway, getting to this topic of the day of what I want to share with you again. One of the postings that I placed on the minds.com, PocbooksCrypto social side of things has to do with, another quote that was made by Taylor Swift. And you've heard me state how you have to get to know a person sometimes, or you have to really listen to them or either ask questions or what have you in your experience. And then that's why a person can make a quick statement like this, and where other persons may really miss the point totally out of left field, other persons who were using their thinking ability and what they know, and also the person background, can come exactly to the conclusion and even an example of this is one way the quote could be applied here, or the spirit of what the person is saying. And that's what I'm going to do right now from what I take from one quote. Dr. Taylor Swift stated that people believe that you have to, forgive and forget, or that you have to forget and forgive. Well, she said in both those words were used that you have to forgive and forget in order to move on. And she said she has found you don't have to do that. You just become indifferent, and then you still move on without any of that happening. Now, on the surface, for many persons of hearing that, they probably don't even understand what she means by that. So let me give you an example. In some communities, at least back in the 70s, 80s, 90s as well. But some communities, they actually did have, gang members. They had people who just didn't like one another at times. And there were a lot of fights, fights all the time for one reason or the other, you see. And yet there were times you could have two men, I'm sure this happened with women too, but the whole point is you could have two men that got into a knockdown, drag out physical fist fight. You hear me? Over the weekend, Friday, Saturday night, or what have you. Maybe too much was drink or what have you. And don't you know, boy, when the fight was breaking up, it was like they were still at each other's throats. You hear me? Couldn't stand each other's guts, even had something to say about each other's mama. Now, as time went by, and I'm not talking, next week. Now, for some, it probably did because that's their personality. But no, some of the ones who really just didn't like each other at times, and I'm not talking necessarily separated by the colors, but just didn't like each other's personalities at times, they found whenever maybe they entered into a same occupation, whether it was a convenience store or what have you, and it didn't even have to be that. But after some time had went by, the next thing you know, sometimes one of them would just give a head nod. It had nothing to do with how you doing and all that. No, it might have been just a head nod. You see what I'm talking about? That was a greeting or what have you. Another one would just head nod back. And over time, it went from the head nod to next thing you know, maybe a year or so later, it was actually just a regular conversation and nothing was ever really even brought up about this situation or that situation, unless they later became such good friends that then they were joking about the whole situation. But see, did you see how it was not this, in order for you to move on in life, to get better, to get a better job or anything of that nature. And see, and on top of that, you see, there's been other individuals where it wasn't as extreme as even fist fights at times, that the damage that was done to maybe a person's livelihood was so much. And see, this has actually happened where it took a person, again, time. And it was more than one day. It was more than 1 week. It was more than a month. It was even more than a year. Don't let me get into more than several years. However, after several years went by, the damage and the hurtfulness that was done to one person by another individual, see, it wasn't even brought up. But don't you know, somehow the situation had worked itself that they ended up going to a luncheon or dinner one time together. And like I said, and the whole situation still was never brought up. And don't you know, those persons even hugged each other. And yet you could still see a little tear in one of the person's eyes because, they could still remember what they had did. And they were, once again, grateful probably even for the saving of face, you see, for that whole situation altogether. So what am I sharing with you all these accounts here? See, in each one of these accounts, now, no one is saying that, God wasn't working on these persons' minds one way or the other, because, God, he does what he does. And see, and even though we know God is love, I told you one of the things that I try not to really ever fall into is to just say for sure, oh, God is just not going to do that. And then I've told persons sometimes in the past, you don't know what God is going to do. And see, and the problem comes with humans at times is when they'll read something and see, and they're still not really seeing the spirit of that person's heart or why they feel like that way. And nor do they care to even put in the time and effort to find out, where they'll put in some type of stipulations. Next thing you know, they'll even try to put persons in some type of destitute situation, destitute financially, destitute of love, destitute of spiritual. Oh my goodness. all those type of things, and then end up trying to say, well, God, you don't know. And see, and as I've said before, when God did certain things, sometimes he did them, but he didn't give the authority to man at times to do the same thing or to treat these other humans in his image in the same way that he did certain things, because he knew exactly what he was doing. And all too often, as I said, you can find out what God is doing sometimes if you are putting the time and the patience, you see, and do things in, once again, loving way. Because when you try to do things in a loving way, I found this out through experiences too over time. Over time, God will give you everything that you need to know in the first place. It takes time, but he does. But then, like I said, to try to force certain issues, to try to guilt trip somebody into forgiveness of this and that or what have you, all it does is make it worse. And for some individuals, that's why they do it, because they really don't want you to heal, as they're saying they want you to heal, but hitting you over the head constantly with certain things that you don't need to be hit over the head with. You see what I'm saying? So the whole point is, that statement again about forgiveness and indifference, and forgetting. No, it doesn't mean that necessarily the situation will not come up again or what have you. But the point is here. We make mistakes, or we can offend somebody almost every day or whatever in this area or that area. And if, once again, you're sincere about continuing to live your best life and to try to be the best person you can, there's no reason to be dwelling on this and that, especially for the regular, just mundane things of life. Like I said, even if you had a knockdown, drag out argument with somebody or what have you, okay, that argument or whatever happened that time. So why sit up there and then try to walk around acting like you're offended for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And in the process, really even forgetting that maybe the argument started because you got caught up again in the peer pressure of things and maybe not valuing the person that you had. See, those are the things that I've forgotten at times. But all the same, do the best you can. And aren't we glad we have that ransom sacrifice to cover us in our weaknesses? Thank you for being here for this thought for the day. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Thursday.